Last week, I showcased the incredible updates to BlackRack's volumetric clouds and deferred rendering mods for KSP, which enhanced the already incredible weather effects and graphics, vastly improving what I for one thought couldn't be improved any further. Now, one of my objectives when filming last week's video was to fly an aircraft to Laythe, as in BlackRack's own words, Laythe is one of the two main attractions for the newest volumetric clouds update, the other star being Kerbal. As the new update adds enhanced clouds and stuff, as one would expect, as well as awesome volcanoes that can be easily spotted from orbit and even from the map screen. Now, if you watched last week's video, you'll know why I wasn't able to head to Laythe in the end, but today that changes. I'll be flying there in a single-stage spaceplane to see what all the hype is about and see these volcanoes for myself. On screen, you can see construction beginning, and I decided that I might have a go at building not just a SSTO, but a SSTA, single stage to anywhere. This term generally refers to a single stage to orbit spacecraft that has a ISRU unit, ore tank, and mining drills on board, so that it can theoretically go anywhere in the Kerbal system, often with places like Eve as an exception, as it can continually refuel itself on low gravity bodies. Now, I actually filmed this build time-lapse last week, as again, it was my intention to feature this SSTA in last week's video, but due to reasons covered in that video, it didn't make the cut, so I decided to reuse the vehicle this week, and that is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, and it might be apparent from the sound of my voice, I have been really ill this week with the flu or COVID or something. I basically couldn't leave my bed from Tuesday to Wednesday, and it was only really by Thursday afternoon that some vague lucidity had returned, so I almost fobbed off doing today's video, but then I was bored and I thought, well, the hard part is done right, the SSTA is tested and built and it all works, so I mean, shouldn't be too tall of an order to fly it to Laythe and back, right? And that probably would have been true if I was 100% better, but I don't think I really was, and I made some rather juvenile mistakes when flying this mission. Now check out what I'm doing right now. This is now me making modifications this week upon loading the craft file, because when I loaded the craft file, I decided that I wasn't really vibing with the old aesthetic. It looked too short and stumpy, so I elongated it using some additional Mark II fuel tanks, as well as a laboratory module that's featured in the Mark II expansion mod. I'll link it in the description below. Now, I didn't film it, but I did test the original SSTA to make sure it could reach orbit and then land safely, and it could fly well both with full and empty fuel tanks. The reason being that sometimes when the tanks are empty, the centre of mass shifts too far back behind the centre of lift, and then the craft is incredibly unstable and essentially impossible to fly. And I didn't retest when I added the extra parts to the craft because I just thought, can't be bothered, it'll probably all be fine.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
On reflection, I probably should have moved the main wings back to accommodate for the fact that we now have a much longer fuselage, but whatever, I'm sure again it'll all be absolutely fine. But glancing at my screen, I don't think there's much more left to do. I'm just strutting a few things here and there. I don't know why I wasn't using auto strut. Again, I was a bit ill, I wasn't 100% with it when I built this craft. We're on the floor of the spaceplane hangar just so I can make sure the wheels all lined up nicely, but now we can do a lovely zoom down through those phenomenal volumetric clouds and get a good look at the SSTA on the runway, ready to light its engines and head into the skies. There it is there. And here we are, accelerating down the runway, waiting until we reach kind of takeoff velocity before we start pitching up and, indeed, become airborne, I suppose. I'm playing at real-time speed at the moment just so you can see kind of what the craft looks like taking off at real-time speed. I know sometimes my practice of speeding up footage to make things a bit more punchy can make performance of aircraft and rockets look a little bit deceptive, so there you go. This is real-time speed, and then in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1... There we go, we're going to speed things up, just kind of get things moving. Again, I'm going to leave the footage playing back not as fast as I normally leave it playing back for a sense, because, again, I wanted to really showcase the volumetric clouds update, which is still relatively new, right? It's only been out for, like, what, the best part of 2 weeks? So, yeah, look at those beautiful clouds there. I feel like I might have really missed a trick here, and I probably should have launched during, like, a thunder or lightning storm just to really showcase those incredible weather effects, but, you know, I don't see myself going anywhere for the foreseeable future, so I'll probably have a chance to do that at some point very soon. I've decided I want to do more with aircraft mods. I've been kind of on the fence about showcasing mods. Like, do I showcase just one mod per video and then gradually integrate them all together? When I say mods, of course I mean parts mods, visual mods. I'll have as many as I possibly can to make the video look as good as possible. There's always a link to There's always a list in the description of a video showing what visual mods are present in case you want to make your game look as good as mine. So yes, what was I going to say? Yes, that was it. It was showcasing multiple parts mods. So again, I don't really like showcasing parts mods just standard in videos, because then people might get confused saying, well, why do I have that part? I want that part. How does that work? But I feel like, you know, enough time has passed now where kind of parts mods are pretty much part of the whole bread and butter of Kerbal Space Program at this point. I feel like this might have been more of an issue. Well, basically this stemmed from the fact that I saw like some comments on Reddit offering, I don't want to say criticizing me, offering some constructive criticism. It was all completely fair, and I actually took some of it on board, thinking like, yeah, actually that's probably a fair point. And one thing was like, I don't get why Matt is so averse about showcasing parts mods, because the game is like done and it's been sold off and it's never going to get any updates ever again. So that might have been a concern when the game was having updates added and parts being added, and so that might have caused confusion. But now enough time has passed that people know about mods, and one glance at my game you can tell it's not a stock install, so hopefully that will trigger some sort of thought that, oh, maybe that's not actually a stock part. So I'll try and start using kind of more parts mods more routinely, I think, going forward. At some point very soon, I really want to try because obviously I said I added the laboratory from the Mark II expansion mod to this SSTA. I really want to try the Mark III expansion mod pack, and mainly the Mark IV spaceplane pack, which I was a huge fan of when it first came out back in like 2014, I think it came out. I had it before I started making YouTube videos, and it was really, really fun. Then when I started making videos for YouTube, I made everything stock. That's because my channel first started out as a channel where I would post my entries into the weekly Kerbal Reddit challenges, which demanded stock parts for obvious reasons. And so I kept my game stock for that, and then I just didn't really know what to do, because I didn't know what I was doing. And now it's been 10 years and I still don't really know what I'm doing. So that's kind of why my channel really started out with pure stock and has gradually branched out to things like visual mods and what have you. So yeah, I think I'm probably going to start integrating mods going forward. And one thing I really wanted to do, so again, in that same kind of, I don't want to make it sound critical, because it was a good feedback. I do like hearing kind of constructive criticism as well as obviously the positive stuff. And one was like, some people were disappointed about my showcasing of the, the Promised Worlds mod, which adds the Deb system to the Kerbal Space Program 1, basically. For those that don't know, Deb was going to be the secondary star system that was added to Kerbal Space Program 2. Obviously, that game has now gone, and so that's never going to happen. But a dedicated team of modders has recreated Deb and has made it available for use in Kerbal Space Program 1. And I showcased that. I basically built an SSTO that used like a Kraken drive, so it had infinite fuel and rage, just because I wanted to showcase as many places as possible. But people kind of disappointed because they wanted me to do things, I'm doing the air quotes thing, properly, like building an actual craft that would have to have the Delta V and fuel, needed to go and set up a colony in that star system and all that. And to that I say, that's fair. For my initial showcase, I just wanted to showcase as many places as possible, just to give people a nice quick overview saying, look at all the places you can go. But I genuinely am really excited to visit Deb again and do things properly. And enter this SSTA. This is kind of like a prototype, because I've not done a mining ship in a very long time. The last time I did anything to do with mining, I'm pretty sure it was the Kerbal Space Program esports event I did with Beardy Penguin. And then before that, it was like, I never really used mining in Kerbal Space Program. And so I might just retest what it's like to mine stuff and synthesize fuel in Kerbal Space Program 1, because my plan is to go back to Deb and establish a permanent base on a moon or a planet there, and then we just have like basically infinite fuel generation, but by means of having a big mining base there. We have a giant space station with lots of fuel tanks that get continually topped up with mining vessels that go to and from the surface of the mining site, because hey, that was part of the plan with Kerbal Space Program 2, right? You would have mining facilities and then automated ship routes that would go from, like, I don't know, space stations with fuel reserves down to the surface of where the mining rigs are, refuel and go back back and forth and have like a big self-sustaining colony, or we'll do something like that, and then ships can enter and then refuel, and basically we just branch out and try and explore the Deb system that way. And that's my big plan, but that's going to take multiple videos because it's a very, very long process. It's probably going to start with a big mining base on Dres, which is where the wormhole to the Deb system is, and then, you know, ships can fly to Dres, refuel there, then go through the wormhole and get to Deb. I'll probably do another separate video where I look at interstellar parts and then fly to Deb again, like properly, so not using the wormhole. But I've actually never done interstellar travel in KSP before. I've never used interstellar mods. I'm going to need to do some homework and revision. So if anyone can point me towards a channel that does lots of interstellar gameplay and tutorials and teaches you how to do that, then do let me know suggestions down below, because I don't know where to even begin with that. I mean, I'm sure it's probably going to be fairly easy once I get the hang of it, but I'm probably going to need to just do lots of practicing off screen before I'm ready to kind of showcase that in a video. So I don't know how long that's going to take me to learn and get the knack of, but it might be a while before I feel confident enough to put that on video, because I might make lots of mistakes. Well, I mean, not that this ever happens in my videos anyway, but I might make mistakes or do things incorrectly, and I don't want to put misinformation out there. I want to at least have some sort of decent demonstration of best practice. Just, it always sounds arrogant when I say things like this, but if I make a video about going interstellar and then you go on YouTube and type in KSP how to go interstellar, there's a good chance my video is going to be very close to the top of the search results, because my channel is quite large for a KSP channel. So I need to make sure it's good. Now, a big warning now, if you have photosensitivity, like photosensitive epilepsy, look away from your screen now. When the note you're hearing finishes playing, that means the flashes of light have stopped. But in just a second, there's going to be some very quick, rapid black and white flashes of light as I time warp many years whilst the ship is refueling. So it's all happening now, so keep your eyes diverted. It was so bad, actually. I added a tinted layer just so that it's a bit easier on the eyes, because it was very obnoxious. I'm really sorry. But yeah, that's, again, I wasn't really used to refueling craft. I was like, oh, by the way, the flashing has stopped now. But yeah, I was like, that took how many years did that take? It took 51 years to refuel our spacecraft on the surface of Minmus. So consider this a non-canon mission for my space agency, Lowne Aerospace 3. This is all just like a trial run so I can get used to making like mining craft. I'm thinking like, okay, is it super important we go somewhere with lots of ore, or can I just land anywhere and we can refuel in pretty good time, even if it takes like a few weeks? And I've now learned that no, we should probably send like a mining, like a satellite network out to find the ore deposits that we can mine efficiently, because it's taken us half a century to refuel what I think is a fairly modestly sized spacecraft. So learning experience there. But we have now refueled. I've not completely refueled. We haven't refueled our oxidizer because we don't need any oxidizer. We're going to Laythe, so we only need our nuclear engines, which of course only require liquid fuel. Now when we get to Laythe, it would be nice if we could fly around with our Rapier engines, but of course we can use the air breathing mode of the Rapier engines because Laythe has an oxygenated atmosphere. So again, we don't need oxidizer is the conclusion of that story. But we are now departing the surface of Minmus, and so our next destination is going to be Laythe. Now you might have missed it during the whole time warping thing, but I did time warp a little bit after the fact, after we'd refueled our tanks, that we were leaving Minmus at a Kerbin to Jool transfer window, which is where if you draw a line from Kerbin to the sun to Jool, Jool is about, I think it's like 101 degrees ahead of Kerbin. So there you are. That's how you know if you're at a Jool transfer window. I do always recommend using proper tools like Transfer Window Planner, because again, I like to, promote best practice. But also, Jool's gravity well is so large that you don't need to get it super duper accurate, because it's very easy to get an encounter with Jool, because again, very, very large sphere of influence. So I actually massively overshot my Minmus ascent burn, so I was like, whatever, we'll just make this an escape burn, I guess. So we're basically just leaving Minmus straight away, and then we're going to need to make two maneuver nodes. Well, we're going to have to do two burns. One is, paradoxically, we're going to burn retrograde to lower our orbit around Kerbin, and then we'll perform another burn to get us all the way to Jool. The reason for this, you can see me plotting the first of these two burns here, is because the closer you burn to periapsis, i.e. the closer you burn to the celestial object that you're orbiting, the more efficient your prograde burn is going to be. And this is due to something called the Oberth effect. The reason for this and the way it works is because obviously at periapsis you are traveling much faster than you are traveling at apoapsis, and the faster you are going, the more efficient your burn is going to be. I always like the analogy of a skateboard, right? So imagine you're on a skateboard, stationary, right? You do a kick with your foot, you're going to speed up a little bit. Now imagine the skateboard is already moving really fast. If you then kick your foot while you're already moving fast, you'll go a lot faster than if you kicked the same way while standing still. Because when you're already going very fast, each bit of extra push adds more energy. And that's basically what the O-berth effect is, but for rockets. If you're a physicist, pretend you didn't hear any of that because that was a massive oversimplification, but that's like a little layman explanation as to kind of why the O-berth effect be how it be. So as you can see, we are approaching Kerbal periapsis, and yeah, our orbital velocity is very fast. It was about 2,600 meters per second before we started firing our engines. Yeah, I'm really sorry, guys. I've had to like stop and start my commentary a lot during the recording of this video because, as I said earlier, I'm quite ill, and I keep having to I've got these like hot drinks. I've got some tea next to me, just sipping to try and keep my throat like from like closing up. But I keep like listening back to bits, and like my voice keeps cracking and words get pronounced weirdly because my throat just does strange things when I'm a bit poorly. So sorry if like some of this commentary might be difficult to listen to. I'm really sorry if it is, but yeah, like I say, I'm definitely on the mend, so hopefully by next week it should all be back to business as usual. But yeah, that was it couldn't really be helped, unfortunately. But as you can see, we have now left Kerbin's sphere of influence, and now we need to do the classic mid-course correction burn that is required to get a nice equatorial flyby of Jool, which of course we need in order to get an encounter with Laythe. Now, ordinarily, when I'm doing Jool missions, I will often do a gravity assist from Tylo to swing us into a stable Jool orbit, basically completely free of charge, using Tylo's massive gravity well. However, again, because we essentially have unlimited fuel in this craft, because we have means to refuel at any stage, I thought, let's just do a capture around Laythe straight away. It's not as efficient, but efficiency isn't something that we need to be worried about, because as you can see, we have over 2.5 kilometers per second of delta V remaining before we even do the mid-course correction burn, which is currently underway on the screen. So there's Laythe on the map screen. We're just waiting for our little orbital line to materialize within its sphere of influence, and then we can just keep burning until we get a nice equatorial flyby. I can't remember if I got it dead on the first time. I think we have to do a very minor correction burn. Although that being said, this is coming together quite well. Let's see. Do you know what? I think that's pretty good. We have a Laythe periapsis of 112 kilometers, which is comfortably above the atmospheric border. So for reference, the atmospheric border on Kerbin, as you probably know, is 70 kilometers above the surface. On Laythe, it is a mere 50 kilometers above the surface. So 112, we are all very, very safely still in space. So I guess we probably would be going slow enough that we could safely aero capture. I don't actually know because I didn't try. But we've got the fuel to do an engine brake and circularize by burning our nuclear engines. And ready? Wait for it. There we are. We have entered Jool's sphere of influence. Now it's going to be a case of just time warping down and, well, I guess, encountering Laythe. There are the 5 Julian moons. We've now passed the orbits of Pol and Bop. Now we're going to just pass by Tylo's orbit, Val's orbit, and then the last one is going to be Laythe, which again we're not passing, we're going to be entering. And, oh, a little bit of a freeze. There we are. There is the blue marble beneath us with the green marble just there. I mean, it's kind of a nice juxtaposition, right? Because for those that don't know, Jool is pretty much the same size as Earth in Kerbal Space Program. So that's kind of the size difference between what Laythe is compared to real-life Earth. And they are. They've got some islands beneath us. And as you can see, there's a couple of volcanic eruptions right there. Look at the horizon there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 volcanoes. These are the things we came for, right? The stars of the show for this video. And another big one on the left just there. So, yeah, this is all very exciting. For me, when I filmed this mission, this was my first time actually seeing these volcanoes in the flesh. Which, thank goodness, right? Because I probably should have checked to make sure that they were indeed there, dramatic enough to warrant their own videos, but glad they were. And there we are now captured around Laythe orbit. Now, I could just enter the atmosphere from here, but again, we've got the fuel to kind of circularize a bit lower, and then we can be a bit more accurate in where we're going to be re-entering, make sure we're definitely encountering a landmass, because you might have noticed, if you've never heard of Laythe before, most of Laythe's surface is covered in ocean. So there's not many land masses to aim for. So it's generally a bit easier to fly space planes to the land from a low circular orbit like this one. So we can kind of see where the land masses are, and it's a bit easier to predict where we're going to end up once we decelerate through the upper parts and lower parts of the atmosphere during entry. I always want to say re-entry, and it's entry, isn't it? Because we haven't. This is the first time we've been in Laythe's atmosphere for this mission. Now, jumping back in the build time lapse, where I said that I hadn't tested the aerodynamics of this vehicle with empty fuel tanks. Well, this is where karma kind of rears its ugly head, where I really probably should have done that. Because although our fuel tanks are not empty, as you can see, we've got 1,250 meters per second of liquid delta V, remaining. We've started backflipping. This thing was really, really difficult to control, even with those air brakes deployed in the back, which really helped to force our center of lift backwards to hopefully be behind the center of mass. It still didn't fly very well. So it was a tricky old thing to fly. So I really probably should have done some tests. So if you are a member of my Patreon or my YouTube channel membership thing, then you will have access to this craft file. I might suggest not downloading it though. If you do download it, make sure you make extensive modifications that it can fly with good stability when the tanks are low, because otherwise this happens basically. In case you're not sure, if you are a member of my Patreon and my membership program and you're not sure how to get access to the craft file, because this video's description doesn't have that, well, this video's description will have links to the Patreon/member version of this video. The way it works basically is that there is just another version of this video that doesn't have ads or anything on it, and it's uploaded unlisted on YouTube, so anyone with the link can access it. And I send the link to my Patrons, and then YouTube members, I don't do the whole YouTube member only exclusive videos, which thank goodness, right, with all the changes YouTube's making where it's shoving those videos down everyone's throats. I'm really glad that I don't do YouTube member videos, because it really annoys me that YouTube have done that. Like, it is driving traffic away from channels because people are getting sick of it, understandably, right? So I don't do membership only videos. What I do is I have like posts on my channel page. So it's like a community post that only members can see, and then in that post there is a link to the Patreon video. So if you're a member and you've never seen the videos that are exclusive to you and you want to know how to access them, that's how you get them basically. So the best way is probably just to turn on the notification bell, and then you'll get notified when those posts go up, and then that's how you can access the member benefits basically. So that's that. So sorry for plugging my paid tiers just there, by the way. We'll go back to talking about the mission. As you can see, I'm very, very tentatively decelerating here. I really didn't want to screw up the landing because I knew that I might not get another attempt, because potentially loading a quick save while in flight might cause the craft to go into a stall or something. I don't know. Luckily, the landing went really well for the first time, mainly because I put the brakes on the landing gear to be maximal, and I had two big powerful parachutes to slow us down really, really quickly upon touchdown, so they wouldn't risk encountering like a rock or some sort of hill that would send us careening and, you know, flipping over and stuff like that. So nice, safe landing. There we are. We've come to a nice touchdown. Now, obviously, this means we're going to have to start refueling in just a second. So when that happens, I will put the photosensitivity like tone up again, and I'll warn you just before it happens. But we're not doing that just yet. Right now, we need to get things all ready for that. So as you can see, we're deploying our little harvester drill just here, waiting for it to extend. Still moving, still going down into the surface. There we are. We can start our surface harvester. And yeah, it's pretty much all ready to begin the mining and refueling. So if you are photosensitive, I would look away right now. You can now hear that music playing. That means that there is flashing happening on screen, so don't look whilst you can hear that. I will tell you as well when the flashing has ended. But yeah, there's currently lots of flashing on screen whilst we refuel the craft. Now, if you are one of the people that's looking away right now, when you look back, which is not safe to do so just yet, so don't just yet, then when you look back, don't look at the amount of time that has passed, because we had another situation that's similar to what happened on Minmus, where I ended up landing on somewhere with not great ore resources. By the way, it's now safe to look back at the screen. So yeah, it's been another several years to refuel the tanks. Luckily, not quite as long as it took to refuel on Minmus, but still a significant amount of time. So this is a good way of informing me that yes, if I were to build a mining station at Dres and indeed in the Deb system, I will need to be a bit more sensible about things and have some sort of satellite network to scan for ore and figure out the best, most efficient places in which to mine. Yeah, I do like making like multi-episode series in which I have to establish lots of infrastructure, like I did. I've done Life on Laythe. 2 or 3 times, I think, at this point, where I established like, space stations, surface bases, and transports to and from them, on Laythe. It's kind of on topic, I guess, right? We're on Laythe right now. And I've done Destination Juno as well. I did the same thing with Juno and all that. We've done that for the Mun. So, yeah, very excited to try to do this for Drez and the Wormhole for the Deb mod. Now, before setting off, I thought we'd do a little walking tour of our SSTA. So, here we are. We're just leaving the main cockpit. Here is the main crew quarters, very spacious, as we can see. And then here we have the laboratory, which again, this is not a stock part. I believe this is the only non-stock part of this vessel. This is the laboratory module that comes with the Mark II expansion mod. So yeah, I guess the quarters are kind of cramped and pokey, but I guys go with the headcanon that we have stasis chambers on board so that the Kerbals will sit in suspended animation for all the many years in which we were just at Minmus, admittedly, refueling. We could pretend that we sent this thing empty to Minmus, and then it refueled itself, and then we just sent a crew shuttle there to go and board it from there. I don't know, let's just not overthink things too much, and get to launch it. Now, I made several attempts at lifting off from the surface of Laythe, and it was very difficult because obviously we have a very... well, it's very hilly, and as you might remember from the very beginning of this video, this thing needed quite a lot of long, flat runway space in order to get the speed up necessary to lift off. And so what I did was this. I rolled down the hill for a bit, and then we're going to go back up the hill and kind of use the hill as like this big kicker ramp, and even then we are going to need to quickly fire the Rapier engines in their much more powerful, but much more inefficient, closed cycle mode, just to give us the necessary thrust-weight ratio to get us into the air. And we have done just that, managed to get clear of those trees. The ground scattered, by the way, is all courtesy of the amazing Parallax mod by Lynx, specifically Parallax Continued, which is kind of the latest release of Parallax. That's what adds all that. Obviously, I have quite a number of visual mods, as I mentioned way back at the beginning of this video. And again, full list of the visual mods being used in this video can be found in this video's description. If you are checking out the description and indeed the comment section down below, and why not leave a little comment and indeed a little like and subscribe if you are enjoying the journey so far, as it really helps me stay above water in the old algorithm these days. The algorithm's been especially not unreliable, but no one really knows what's going on basically with the algorithm anymore. So yeah, it's always a massive help if you are enjoying the content so far. And there we are, another little visual mod rearing its head, vapor cones there as we head into as we accelerate to supersonic speed, passing very close to this volcanic cloud just here. And there we are. Now, Laythe is much easier to reach orbit with an SSTO than Kerbin because, well, as you can see, we're not even going to need to use the oxidizer that we have left over. What was that? 46.15 units of oxidizer remaining, which is not very much, but we can actually make it all the way to orbit using only liquid fuel because the Rapier engines will burn long enough, we can go fast enough that we can kind of get our apoapsis to above the atmospheric border, and at that point we can use the nuclear engines to finish circularizing our orbit. So that's why I didn't really bring much oxidizer for the journey back. I only added a little bit of oxidizer just to help us get off the surface of Laythe to begin the journey back home, I guess. Now, obviously, I mentioned earlier that one of the biggest flaws of this SSTO was the fact it doesn't glide particularly well when its fuel tanks are empty. Luckily, we kind of done the hard part, which is, landing at Laythe. But we are going to need to now land back at Kerbin with similar restrictions, or I guess a better word would be difficulties, because it's going to take quite a lot of fuel to get all the way back to Kerbin, especially because we're going to be capturing around Kerbin using engines, because we're going to be going in way too fast for safe aero capture. So we're going to be we're going to have to land with not very much fuel remaining. Now, I guess we could now, rather than leaving the Jool system straight away, go to somewhere like BOP, refuel all of our tanks, then go to Kerbin. Then we'll have enough Delta V to circularize at Kerbin, land on Minmus, and make sure all of our tanks are really full. But we're already basically half an hour into this video, and I feel like I don't like my videos being too much longer than 40 minutes or so. So I thought, I don't want to make this mission more complicated than it needs to be, and I don't know, adds a bit more excitement and drama and all that to the mission if we have to land under the difficult circumstances having a poorly designed craft. And hey, maybe this is just, you know, my punishment for not testing this craft. I mean, I did test it, and then I loaded it up, and I was like, looks a bit stumpy. It would look better if it was a bit longer. And to my credit, I do think it looks a lot better with a longer fuselage. But I really should have thought for longer than 3 seconds about it, and maybe, like, moved the main wings back a bit to move the center of lift back, because that's the main problem. If you have craft that do what this craft does, where when the fuel levels are low and you're re-entering the atmosphere, this is particularly true for space shuttles a lot of the time, you end up flipping out, and like the nose flips backwards, you end up doing backflips. That's usually because the center of mass has moved so that it is behind the center of lift. So basically, when you're in the spaceplane hangar, there are some buttons you can click. One of them gives you that little black and yellow ball that marks your vessel's center of mass, and there's another one that gives you a little like a little blue arrow, usually pointing perpendicularly up from the ground. That's your center of lift. You basically always need your center of mass to be in front of your center of lift. There is a little saying actually in aerospace in that an aircraft with a center of mass too far forward will fly badly. A plane with its center of mass too far back will fly once. There's probably variations of the quote, but that's it. So yeah, basically that's the rule of thumb. There are exceptions. It's not a hard and fast rule. There are, for example, modern jet fighters. I believe, in fact, the Eurofighter Typhoon, which in my mind is a modern jet fighter because it came out in my lifetime, I think, but it's getting on a bit now, the Eurofighter Typhoon. But I think, this is purely from just watching, like, James May documentaries when I was a child, so I haven't looked up the source of this at all. But I remember those documentaries saying that the Eurofighter Typhoon is aerodynamically completely unstable and it should not physically be able to fly. But it has those canards on the front, and it's all powered by computers, and it can make adjustments to the positions of its flaps kind of way quicker than any human could react, and that's what allows it to maintain stable flights. Like, it defies all laws of physics, but through computers, it can fly, and maybe that's why. So its center of mass is very close to its center of lift, which means it's very, very maneuverable. Too maneuverable for a human to be able to fly it safely, but computer-assisted control means that it works. I don't know, and I don't care to look it up because I still feel quite poorly, and like I'm going back and listening to parts of this commentary as I go along, and my voice does sound pretty bad. Like I'm trying to, like, anytime where I talked and my voice sounded like disgusting, I like re-recorded the bit, but there are probably parts that I've missed. So I'm very much looking forward to not being ill next week. That's definitely something I'm looking forward to. But as you can see on screen, I'm just in the process of kind of getting our Kerbin encounter. So I'm plotting a little mid-course correction burn so that our periapsis passes nice and close to Kerbin's surface, hopefully not intersecting the atmosphere, because again, we're going to be coming in way too fast. The craft will just overheat and explode the minute it gets through to, like, I don't know, below, guessing about 50 kilometers. So we want to circularize around Kerbin purely using engines. From there, we're not going to have enough fuel to circularize into a low Kerbin orbit, but we'll be going at a safe enough speed that we can then do a series of aero brakes to bring our apoapsis down, and then eventually, you know, enter the atmosphere for the final time and land back at the Kerbal Space Center's runway. That is the plan anyway. As you can see, we are now deep into interplanetary space, ready to perform that mid-course correction burn. There we are, firing up those 3 nuclear engines. I'm watching the little gauge drop down as we get our periapsis past Kerbin, nice and close to the planetary surface. We can go to the map screen and see if we are indeed achieving that. The maneuver node maker isn't always completely accurate to what you actually get once you do the burn, but as you can see, it all seems to be coming together very nicely. We can now close that out and have a look. Periapsis is a bit too low, 87 kilometers. That's a bit better, so yeah, I'm happy with that for now. But yeah, we're now at the point, I always feel like after the half-hour mark, it's a bit like driving, right? Where, for me, I mean, one of the common saying, I know this is now a bit of a rambly tangent, isn't it? But there's a bit of a saying that Americans think 100 years is a long time, and Europeans think 100 miles is a long distance to drive. And for me, it's like, going on a drive, I feel like if a drive is more than like 2.5, 3 hours, that's a long drive. Like, that's like, okay, now it's not like we can do this in a day and back. This is now the drive. This is a long drive. We need to lock in and concentrate. I'm bored out of my mind. I hate this long drive. And in the world of commentary, I feel like half an hour. After I reach the half an hour mark, it's like, whew, we've really got to start locking in. Are there any service stations we could pull into? Have a donut or something? I don't know. And it's made even worse by the fact that it's a great deal of agony for me to talk with this sustained kind of caliber. Like, it's not just like, this isn't how I talk to my friends. Like, conversations don't go down like this. They don't say like, hello, Matt, to which I reply, hello. Today, as you can see, I am in a good mood. The sun is out. I have my water bottle. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I have to be talking almost like a TV presenter to kind of get this tone across. I don't know. You might hate my tone. If you do, let me know, and I'll try and have a night more. Like, hey guys, this is just welcome back to Matt talking at low volume into a microphone for a bit. I don't even know. Did that sound even any different? I don't know. Certainly more relaxed. It just feels a bit more pretentious. I don't know. Maybe it feels like a bit more like a local late night radio type thing. Like, you know, it's the midnight shift. Stars are out, and I'm on my 50th cigarette of the hour. Coming up next is I don't listen to the radio, so I don't know if this is on point. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of vibe I think that gives. But yeah, like I say, it is indeed late night in terms of the video right now, because we're on the dark side of Kerbin. But hey, the dark side of Kerbin, that must mean that we are in the Kerbin system, right? We have entered Kerbin's sphere of influence, and just in a second, we're going to be captured. Ready? There we are. We are now captured in eccentric Kerbin orbit. So now it's going to be a case of time warping up to apoapsis, pointing retrograde, and dropping our periapsis to be within the atmosphere so that we can decelerate using the magical power of air resistance. Now, one thing I'm doing here actually is, as you can see, I'm selecting all of our liquid fuel tanks and pumping them all into the forwardmost tank to try and force our center of mass to be as far forward as possible to increase the ease at which we can maintain stable flight while gliding and, you know, re-entering Kerbin's atmosphere during our aerobrake passes. Here we are. We have a periapsis height of 52 kilometers, so pretty high, but low enough that we should indeed be decelerating sufficiently. We can deploy our air brakes as well, or when those temperature gauges already start rearing their ugly heads just there. But yeah, nice little safe aero brake. As we continue to do aero brakes, our periapsis will drop lower and lower along with our apoapsis. So yeah, we're going to do a small retrograde burn though here, because I think 52 kilometers was probably a little bit too cautious. Like, it's going to take too long to pass through, although then I got a bit trigger happy with time warp and I ended up time warping through most of the atmosphere. So here's now attempt number 3 at aero capturing with a periapsis height of 45-ish kilometers. So yeah, as you can see, lots more re-entry effects going on just there, and our apoapsis is coming down far more rapidly. So hopefully only, you know, one or two more aero brakes should be required to bring ourselves down into a final orbit. And look at that, the Kerbal Space Center is more or less at where our periapsis is actually. So I'm going to try and go for a more aggressive re-entry profile here, just so we can try and encounter the Kerbal Space Center on this pass without needing to burn our engines again, because we've only got 362 meters per second of delta V. And ideally it would be nice to have a bit of fuel left at the very end, just again to act as ballast for this craft, try and keep our center of mass as far forward as possible so that we can fly a bit more stably, and also we've got a bit of fuel left for the engines, like when I say engines, I mean the Rapier engines. So if we need to do a kind of a small kind of flight towards the runway because we've overshot or undershot, we have the resources available to do that. But so far, I think it's been going very well. This is now below us is the area of land, the peninsula on which the Kerbal Space Center sits, and in just a second, there's the little mountain range that's just to the west of the Kerbal Space Center. And there we are. We've got a little crosshair on the map screen because there's some debris, I think, left on the launch pad that we can now see as a potential target vessel. So yeah, we definitely should be okay. Our glide ratio, well, I was going to say, the glide ratio of this aircraft is horrible. So we will need to do a bit of burning with the Rapier engines just here to kind of get ourselves to so that we definitely don't undershoot the runway, basically. But at this point, I was pretty happy and I was pretty confident that nothing was going to go wrong. This isn't foreshadowing, by the way, like earlier. Like, I'm pretty sure nothing did go wrong. Like, I filmed this all yesterday, and now I'm sitting here to commentate over the footage today, so I might have forgotten something, but I don't think so. I'm looking at my editing timeline. There's only a couple of more minutes left in the video, so hopefully I've not forgotten something major. But there it is. And look at that lovely little orange glow on the yonder there. Thank you thank you mostly due to the volumetric clouds mod bringing in those effects just there. And there is the Kerbal Space Center illuminated there by artificial light, and of course the runway. And look, it must have rained recently, and I can tell this because if you look at the runway, it's kind of got a bit of a mottled texture to it. Those are puddles pooling on the surface of the runway. And indeed, looking at the roads around the Kerbal Space Center, there's some mirrory looking surfaces there. That's all surface water. So it's obviously rained recently, and this is part of the Volumetric clouds mods. And there you are. Did you see a little reflection of our craft on the runway surface there? Again, confirming that's not like a graphical glitch. Those are just genuine puddles. That's one of my favorite little features that came with the Volumetric clouds release file. And there's the, again, getting little glimpses of our spaceplane reflected in the wet ground below us. And there we are. We have come to a stop after 63 years, 418 days, 5 minutes and 21 seconds away. Our Kerbals have returned to the Kerbal Space Center. So, if you made it this far, thank you so much for making it this far. I hope you enjoyed this video despite my dying voice. And especially big thanks if your name is one of the people on screen. They are, of course, my Patreon supporters and my YouTube channel members make all of this content possible. So big thanks if your name is there. But yes, like I say, that there's nothing else really more for me to say. So thank you for watching. Like the video if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.